Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, the opposition speeches in the House today, fact-free and filled with inconsistency, as indeed are many of the members on the opposition benches, have clearly illustrated to us yet again that they are totally unaware and out of touch with what New Zealanders really need and want. The day-to-day reality of how most of us live our lives, not spending more than we earn, saving for our retirement and working hard so that our families can get ahead, are almost totally unknown quantities to these opposition parties, and we've heard a surfeit of evidence to support that this afternoon. Now, Labor and their big borrowing, big spending, dogma-driven mates, the Greens, are determinedly ignorant about the issues that matter to us. The PM today in question time, just to remind you, Mr Speaker, called it the Greens' economic lunacy. Bill English, in leading this debate on appropriations today, raised many good questions and challenged the opposition members to show us their plan, their new initiatives, instead of adopting their usual approach, which is to fund the problems and not solve the problems, which I thought was a very neat phrase he came out with. The opposition speakers today have not delivered anything new, but let's look closely at the prospect of change. What would New Zealand have to lose if they elected that motley crew? Maybe with the Imp party thrown in to boot, the Hone and Kimi unholy alliance. Let's add up the risk to the voters if they embrace these deviant couplings. For starters, they'd destroy the fragile recovery and squander all the hard-won gains. Gains that have been fought for by hard-working New Zealanders and led by our outstanding Prime Minister John Key and the Finance Minister Bill English. Now, the alliance of the hard left would rule the show and I would imagine totally torpedo our steadily climbing economic growth. To seal their shonky deals would cost all of us in this country in the billions. And let's just take one recent example that emerged today in the House and was yesterday and rather last week mentioned in the House in question time. This is the nonsense specifically that the Greens are peddling around the Maui dolphin. They're trying to scaremonger and to ban all oil exploration in an area off the coast in Taranaki where there has not been one single incident involving the Maui dolphin over the past 44 years. And that's despite 23 oil wells being drilled. Not a single incident, not a single sighting, not a single problem. More than 700 fishing trips where there have been on board independent observers. Not a single sighting of the Maui dolphin. However, it has been very clearly and scientifically documented that some 95% of the risk to the dolphins is from set netting, which is a practice that the Minister of Conservation, Nick Smith, has resulted in him doubling the area of protection because he does take that threat seriously. We do as a government because we do care about the real threats to this endangered species. But we do not make up imagined threats to suit the political agenda, as the Greens are doing. They would, and we've heard it today and repeatedly, make up these imagined threats, and really what they're going to be doing is sacrificing the economy of Taranaki, and I reckon the whole country actually, in order to attract the oxygen of publicity that they need to survive politically. If they get their way, what would be the likely outcome for Taranaki? I mean, the Prime Minister started to spell it out today, as did Nick Smith. By shutting down the Pohukura gas field, which is essentially what the Greens are trying to do, they shut down 50% of New Zealand's gas resources. It would cost around 5,000 jobs, and it would cripple our ability to produce the gas we need to function as a country. That would mean we'd probably have to turn on the coal-fired power station at Huntly. That would mean that our greenhouse emissions would go through the roof. We'd end up having to import more of the fuels, which would have a very bad effect on our balance of payments. New Zealand would not earn the nearly $1 billion in royalties and taxes that we get every year off those industries. It's precisely that sort of Looney Tunes, reckless and irresponsible behaviour that would send New Zealand down the wrong economic path. There are, on an upward-looking note, many good reasons to measure the success of the economy, as has been managed by Bill English and this John Key-led government over the past nearly 6 years. If you measure the success of the economy by our GDP, our gross domestic product has increased by a very healthy 3.8%, and that's just in the year to the end of March. And that makes New Zealand the third fastest growing developed economy in the world. Our 3.8% annual growth compares very favourably indeed with the 3.5% they've managed to get in Australia, the 2% in the United States, and around 0.9% through Europe. Now, our economic growth, understandably, is the envy of many other countries because it is broad-based. It has positive contributions from the construction industry, from mining, from agriculture, retail trade, and the accommodation sectors. And there is even more to celebrate, as that growth in the economy is matched by even higher levels of consumer and business confidence being at around a 20-year high. So for those who don't evaluate their economic prospects in terms of GDP, if they want to bring it closer to home and measure it more in terms of jobs and higher incomes, the good news is once again delivered by this government. In the past year alone, 84,000 more jobs were created, and the budget last month forecast an additional 170,000 jobs by mid-2018. More jobs equals more opportunities for New Zealanders, and then we'll all be better off. If we stick with this government's program, even more New Zealanders will see the gains in their own wallets. The average full-time wage is expected to rise by $7,600, so that would mean that the average wage would be about $62,300 over the next 4 years. Now, this follows, you'll recall, around a $3,000 increase in the average wage over the past 3 years. So, to see how much progress we've made, you only need to look back to the previous Labour government's record. And maybe I won't dwell on that, actually. I think enough time has been spent on their failed policies. The previous speaker spoke about education. Let's look at some of the initiatives that we've managed to put in place. Hekia Parata and the Associate Minister, Nikki Kay, despite the tight financial constraints, have increased total spending on early childhood, on primary and on secondary education. It's going to come out at around $10.1 billion this year. National, as a government, is investing $155.7 million over 4 years in early childhood education. And this is an area I think that we've had noticeable success in, and we've really made some gains. We didn't just talk about it, we delivered on it. And that's something that is a hallmark of this government. Giving children the best start in life is something that this government believes in very strongly indeed. And it is, we believe, one of the greatest investments we can make in the future of our children. With early childhood education, we targeted around 98% participation. That's by next year in 2016, and we've already hit 93%, and we're looking very likely to achieve that goal in rapid time. I think the amount of money that we've spent on ECE is almost double that, $800 million under Labour and $1.5 billion under this government. When it comes to health, as many know, that was one of the big spending areas in this government, and it's something that I think the Honourable Tony Ryle has managed particularly well over the past 5.5 years. Bringing in the policy of free GP visits for the under-13s, extending it out to that, has cost around $90 million, but it is money very well spent. The earlier a child can get to the doctor, the better their health will be ultimately. As I've said in speeches in my own North Shore electorate, some things are priceless. And children's health is definitely in that category. The ability for parents not to have to worry about the money and to be able to get their children to the doctor in a timely fashion is an enormous addition to strengthening the families. And that's something very close to the heart and soul of this government. Budget 2014 is going to deliver more than $32 million over the next 4 years to further improve cancer services. And for the 20,000 New Zealanders each year who are given the sentence that they have cancer, that they have to live with it, they have to be able to go through the treatments. The measures that we're putting in place to allow psychological counselling and support, I think, is going to make an enormous difference to their quality of life. Paula Bennett has also continued to deliver, and in this budget there have been huge gains for the most vulnerable. And this government is determined to protect the most vulnerable, particularly those that suffer from abuse and neglect. The tragic statistics are indeed sobering, and I think when you look at the fact that more than 50 children have died in the past 5 years because of extreme abuse, it is imperative that we step in with policies, with money, with backup, and with rigorously thought through and well argued support structures for the families, and always putting the children at the heart of the equation, which is something that the Honourable Paula Bennett does very, very well. So I'm very proud of this budget, I'm very proud of this government, and that is why, Mr Speaker, I commend this Appropriation Supplementary Estimates Bill, Imprest Supply Bill to the House. Thank you.
I call Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I want to talk about housing in this estimates debate. Housing was